Three, two, one, here we go. Rainman's Take podcast. Observations on the world we live in. My take on current events and other topics of interest. Also interviews with some really cool people. So let's get the conversation going. Hey everybody, it's the Rain Man. I want to introduce my guest, a longtime friend, Tim Taule. Timmy, how you doing, brother?
Very good, Brian. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, I wanted to have Tim on because Timmy is a former Army Ranger, war vet, both Afghanistan and Iraq. And I wanted to have Tim on because he's got a very interesting perspective, different than some of the other friends that I've had on, in that Timmy was a lot older when he enlisted into the Army after 9/11. We're going to get into that. But I found that fascinating because back in the day when after 9/11, when that affected all of us, Timmy is probably one of the rare few that was kind of outside the age window to do anything, but persevered and made it happen and stepped up and was part of the whole overall war effort. So I definitely want to get your take on all of that, Tim. But let's go ahead and start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your background, and we'll work our way up to when you enlisted.
Sure, absolutely. Grew up on Long Island. Great place, fantastic place. Grew up with brother and two sisters. Mom and dad, typical Long Island family. Grew up in a pretty affluential area. And after high school, I wasn't quite like you and did the 4 years straight of Hopkins. I did the alternate route where I went to 5 different colleges in 4 different states, finally ended up in Arizona and graduated from Arizona. From there, I went out to California for about 15, 17 years. The last couple is when I met you.
Yep.
And that's pretty much it. Basic childhood and, nothing special, just a loving family. Grew up in a very Catholic household and, just typical, not quite Norman Rockwell, because my dad's Dominican, so it adds a little flavor to it. But very typical, loving home, great childhood, and played sports all my life. I played football, I wrestled, I played lacrosse in high school, and then played lacrosse in college at a few different places. Played at Nassau, played at Roanoke, and played at Arizona.
Nice. Hey, now, did you have any family members that were in the military before?
I had distant uncles who I never met. And it was so interesting when you asked me this because, and it's still prevalent in a lot of my friends, and this sounds terrible, but like we really thought growing up that people who joined the militaries were suckers. What are they doing? We really, or at least I did in my group of people, it was like, if you don't have anything to do, go join the military.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If you're just laying around, it was kind of an afterthought for most people. So I probably went through most of my life like that. And what happened is that, in LA too, I forgot to bring this in, but I was acting in LA. I was I don't want to say working actor because the work was hard to find, but it was me and all the boys, Tommy and Jimmy, and we're all doing that thing. And I happened to jump into this theater company called Playhouse West. And it was one of the few bastions where you could go and be like a free person, without the kind of Hollywood their whole ideology on top of you. And they were very, very pro-military in this theater company.
Oh, interesting.
They did a play called Welcome Home Soldier. And this is the funny thing, because I was playing a soldier in a play 4 years before I entered the military. So this play was not a play. This play was so much more than a play because it was for the Vietnam veterans and it was essentially a welcome home to them.
Yeah.
So the first act starts out with all these hippies and stuff spitting on soldiers and whatnot. And as they progress through the play, you know, the soldiers are finally welcomed home. And I think that's the big thing that I met there was this guy, John Pagel. John Pagel was a Vietnam vet. He was in the 101st and did a lot of time in Vietnam, and he was a crunchy. He was the smallest guy in the platoon, so he was the guy diving in holes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Meeting him had a huge influence on me. You know, I was blown away by this little tiny man who looks like he could put the fear of God in anybody, you know, just because of his demeanor. And there was another guy, Tom Aki. So these were ex-Vietnam vets who would come to the play for healing.
Oh, wow.
We used to go to the VA with a van and pick up like 11 or 12 guys who were at the VA hospital, and they would watch the play. What was incredible about it is that the play was so good that the Vietnam vets would sometimes think it's, you know, because we would have actors in the audience who would come up and say, when I got back from Vietnam, this happened. So they thought it was part of the play. So they got up and they would do it. So some nights the play would run 4 hours because everybody would go on with speeches who weren't even in the play. So that play and John Pagel had just an immense effect on me as a person. It changed my whole view of everything, you know, as far as the military. Because like I said before, I hate to say it, but, you know, growing up in an affluential neighborhood in Syosset, New York, you're not thinking about joining the Army. You're thinking about where you're going to make your first million. So
that's and so that was 4 years before you joined. So you're in your early 30s when you're doing that. And
yeah, I mean, I got out to LA probably I was like 24. So I did a lot of acting. Oddly enough, I was more successful once I got out of the Army, because the Army teaches, you know, like I would never be prepared for anything, you know, and one of the, like, I'm convinced myself that every single person should join the military for a minimum of 2 years, just for the structure, just to get up and make your bed every day. Yeah. You know, like those type of patterns in your life. And so when I got back to LA, you know, everything was structured. Okay, I have an audition at 8 o'clock. That means I got to be at the gym at 6:30. That means that, you know, everything was a time hack. Yep. Oh, I'm off my time hack now. Yeah. Like everything in my life changed for the better as far as how I approached anything. Yeah. You know?
And you know what, Timmy, that's actually great that you say that, because that's something that I personally feel, and they used to do this in America in the, you know, up until I think the 50s, where everybody did something after high school, whether it was join the military and for whatever reason they stopped doing that. And I think we should get back to it, whether it's the military, the Peace Corps, something to get a kid out of his bubble, learn those discipline things, see the world, interact with completely different people. I mean, I totally agree with you, but yeah, that's so it sounds like, and obviously we're bouncing around here, but you brought it up. So when you got done in 2005, you went back to California, or you were out there anyway? Okay.
Yeah, well, it was kind of a brief stay, because it was really, there's a couple things that went into effect for me moving back to New York. And I had to beg my wife. She was born and raised she was born in Mexico, but born and raised in LA. So the thought of being in cold New York was just not. But I said, listen, two things changed. The fact that I went to the military, and I'll get into that in a second, and the fact that I had my first kid. So the first year out, 2005, 2006, I had my best year of acting. Like, did an iPhone commercial, did it, you know, I was just, my wife like couldn't believe the amount of money that was coming into our household, you know? So it was pretty cool. The following year, I made like $18,000. So right away as a father, you know, like, I'm sure you're the same as me, but like, you know, for me, having a child just put everything off of me and onto him, you know? And my wife would get mad so much too, because all the attention was on him, you know? So, and the other thing was, I couldn't imagine raising a child in Los Angeles. And it's not, I had a great time there. The homegrown people in LA are my favorite. To me, it's kind of the people who kind of come there and try to find themselves and in the reality, I was there for 17 years, but I probably left with like 4 really good friends, you know, because it's such a fleeting, and it's tough being a soldier too, you know, like I remember the first time I went to my wife's work, she said she worked at Temple Beth Am, which is a very exclusive Jewish school on Olympic and La Cienega. So it's a big school. It's, you know, it's a really nice place. So they're very pro-military.
Yeah.
So they had me come in and talk to the kids, but they wanted me to put on the dress greens. You know, they wanted all the flashes. And, you know, you've seen the 82nd outfit. We got the French thing. Oh, you know, it's like I walk in, I look like I'm, you know, Audie Murphy or something like that. But I got to tell you, walking, and she worked literally a quarter of a mile from my house, like people like yelling stuff at me while I'm walking down the street in uniform.
Really?
You know, so LA to me just wasn't the kind of place. I think it's great when you're single. I just can't imagine raising children there. And because there's no communities, you know, like that's what I love about Long Island is that there's neighborhoods, right? And we all take care of each other. We had a storm the other day. Hey, I got a generator, plug in, you know, hey, help me out. I need an extension cord. You know, that's the kind of place. I live on a block where there's like 30 kids. You have to go 5 miles an hour because they're playing basketball over here, hockey over here. So that's the reason why I kind of, and it just got so scary trying to make a living like that.
Yeah.
You know, with kids, you know, so I was like, you know what? It's not about me. I'll come back at 65 when, you know, when things, you know, when I don't have to support these kids and get them through college, you know?
Yeah.
So that was the main, there was two main reasons was, you know, the kid and kind of LA not being, I think, a great place to raise children.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of jumped out of acting for a while. And, you know, it's really scary when you do so well and then like you're up so high, you know, and everything's fine. And then you start burning principal, you know, you start spending $5,000-$6,000 a month. You're like, oh my God, I can't do this.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. That's, we had so we played, Tim and I played club lacrosse in LA for the last probably 2 or 3 years of the 90s. And I drive up from San Diego and just the guys that we play with, we're just great. All right. So here we go. So you have that run with that play, you meet a couple of Vietnam vets, and then there's about a 4-year interlude. And then you sign up. What was it? 9/11 that triggered it?
I'm definitely a 9/11 baby. That without 9/11, I would have certainly. I mean, I remember when the Desert Storm started, and I was working at a gym in Tucson. I was just kind of getting out of school. I was coaching lacrosse at the university, so I had my day job, and then at 3 o'clock I'd bounce over to the university and coach, which I loved. You know, although I wasn't very good because I don't know if you remember, I had a bit of a temper. Chris Moore does because he was really mad at me quite a few times. But so it was me and a bunch of other guys, and it's so funny because I always think of the funny scene in Stripes when they're all standing there, and so all my friends were, you know, average actors sitting at a coffee shop before they go out for their auditions and drinking coffee. They're like, we should join up, you know. And then my one buddy who was I think they discontinued his MOS, but he was like an aero scout. So he was in the helicopters with the pilot, but he was kind of the navigator.
Yep.
I'm not even sure if the MOS exists anymore, but he always told us he was a helicopter pilot, which we laugh at him now because, you know, in the military, everybody says stuff that is not true.
Yeah.
Oh, and let me just clear one thing up. And this is, I guess, I'm sure you'll understand this, but some people don't. I went to U.S. Army Ranger School. I graduated in 0903. That's my class. I don't consider myself a Ranger because I was with the 82nd. I consider myself Ranger qualified.
Okay.
So how it usually works is that, you know, there's the Ranger Battalion, right? The 75th Ranger Battalion, break it up into three, the brigade broken up into three, first bat, second bat, third bat. That's JSOC, Joint Special Operations.
Okay.
It's so different from what the conventional, you know, foot soldier does. So I you know, because I'm so conscious of not, you know, portraying myself because I just hate when people do it. So I'm Army qualified. I wear my Ranger tab, but the scroll, those are the guys who are the Rangers.
Okay. Okay.
So, anyway, I forgot where I was now. So, so getting back to, so we all stood there and we're like, and it was like that thing from Stripes when they say, okay, step forward. And the only guy who stepped forward was Harold Ramis. And he was like, you know, so that's what it was like. I was supposed to go with 4 of my friends. And back then they had a buddy system where they would put you up and try to get you in the same units and stuff.
Right.
I thought that would be a lot of fun, but needless to say, I was the only guy. Like 4 guys came to the recruiting office, 3 guys came the second time, 2 guys came to sign papers, and 1 guy went AWOL.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, he was joining up for the National Guard, so I don't know how I don't know how they deal with AWOLs in the National Guard, but they kind of just kicked them free. So I signed up, but the problem was when I signed up in October, right after September 11th, I was 35. So when I went into MEPS, which is where you go to get your contract,
Yep.
that's the most bizarre place in the world. I don't know if you've ever seen the old Phil Silvers show, Sergeant Bilko.
Yeah. I have,
Okay, not the one with Steve Martin, but back in the 50s, they had one, and they had this one thing. It kind of showed you how, like, the Army's just a big wheel and it doesn't stop. So, like, they mistakenly inducted a chimpanzee into the Army. And that's what I get from MEPS, you know, because, like you walk into a room with 13 guys and they're like, okay, squat and walk like a duck. And the doctor would look and see if your spine was straight.
Yeah.
So it was just, to me, it was like everything was so funny, but I wanted 82nd because I wanted airborne. I didn't really want 82nd. I just wanted to do airborne infantry. I'm like, if I'm going to do this for 3 years, it's on my thing. And this is what I want. I want the best experience I can get out of this. I'm terrified of heights. So let's go airborne. So the guy comes back. He's like, well, we can't get you in there right now, but we can get you in the 25th, Hawaii. You know, the guy's trying to juice me up. I'm like, you know, my sister lives there. She's married to a Navy guy. He's a military guy that I met much later. My sister married a Navy doctor. They got divorced later, but he's a super guy. So I really wanted 82nd. I really wanted airborne. And so he comes back. He's like, well, I can put you here. It's a 13 Foxtrot. And I'm like, and I told the guy, he was so, you know, those guys down here, that I feel bad for a lot of guys because, you know, they're just pushing paper.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be like, but I was just telling the guy, I said, I feel like I'm buying a car. You know, and the guy got really offended, but I was like, because, you know, again, little kids wouldn't say that because they don't know anything, right? An 18-year-old kid would never say that. So I said, look, dude, I said, not dude, I said, look, Sergeant, that was the tough thing too, is going in so old, like me kind of being that soldier was very difficult because like an NCO would walk in a room, I wouldn't even stand up. So then I was the best at push-ups because every time I did that, I'd have to get down and knock them out, right? So he finally gets the contract, but he says, you have to go in January. I said, well, I'm going to be 36 in January. And he said, let me see if I can get you a waiver. So they went through some stuff, went through my physical, like, you know, the EKG and stuff like that, just to make sure I wasn't broken bad goods or something. And the guy came back, he said, you got it. You're in an entity delayed program. That was really weird now. Okay. So now I'm 35, I'm turning 36 in November. And I have this 2.5 month period before I'm going to, I don't know where, you know, my girlfriend, who's now my wife, is bawling her eyes out every day. My mom's like, what are you, crazy? My wife actually said to me at the time, she says, I'm dating you because I didn't want to date someone. My wife's a lot younger than me. I didn't want to date someone my age because I thought they joined the service. And now look at that, now you joined the service. She thought I'd never do it at my age, right? So that's essentially what led me to the, you know, going up to that date.
Yeah. And then, so you went right into boot camp. My question was, especially, this was something that just for my own personal interest, because, as a college graduate in the Marine Corps, you have to, in order to be a pilot, you have to be an officer. You have to have gone to college. So just out of curiosity, was going off the officer route, was that just not in the cards for you, or you just didn't want it, or?
It certainly was on my mind a lot. I'm glad I didn't, though, because coming in as, I think coming in as a young officer is hard enough, but now you're coming in a guy who's left his whole civilian life. Maybe it would have gained it a little more respect because of my age, but for me, you know, there was a lot of things I was up against, and there was a lot of, like, not everybody said, oh, cool old dude's joining, you know, it was kind of like, this guy's probably a bum. He probably had nothing to do, you know, so it wasn't all showered with, you know, thanks for being here. And, you know, the military is a tough place, and it's any fun you can have, it's going to be ripped away because it's a serious job.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
now,
like,
what was your, What was your take on boot camp? Was it what you were expecting?
I tell you what, dude, I didn't think, I'm so surprised. Like the fact that I made it through Ranger School, if you would have asked me that my second week in basic training, I know you guys call it boot camp, we call it basic training. Yeah. I'll probably have to throw a couple Marine jokes at you at some point. So basic training, I tell you, the first road march, 3 miles, I was like, I'm done. I can't do this. I had maybe 30 pounds on me, my feet. You know, when you live as a civilian, you're a tenderfoot, you know, you're soft. No matter how much working out you do, yeah. It's not like carrying a 60-pound pack and a 240. You know what I'm saying? Like your body's not, unless you do that a lot, it just doesn't prepare you. I was terrified. And basic training to me as a 36-year-old man was like prison. You know, like it was really horrible. Like I couldn't wait to finish because I knew that once I got to my duty station, it's more like a job. Yeah. You know, you cut out at 4 o'clock, you're done. You can do what you want. This is in the barracks, you know, you're 24 hours, people looking at you and stuff. And the way they do it in the basic, all the infantry does basic at Fort Benning. So you just do your basic right into your AIT. Okay. You know, some AITs, you got to go to different bases and stuff like that. But all infantry, all airborne, everything is done right at Benning. So it almost killed me. And I was terrified. Like I really thought that there's no way I'm going to do this. And I was going to be so embarrassed. But the one thing you learn and further, and it helped me in Ranger School, is that I just tell myself I'm going to quit tomorrow. Not today, tomorrow. Yeah. And it just worked. And every time someone fell out, if you're on a march or whatever, or some guy couldn't make it, I felt like I got his power. Like I was the Highlander, you know? Yeah. So like in Ranger School, you're walking, boom, guys, body's just full. Middle of the night, boom, fall down. It was almost like I'm still walking. I'm still here. I'm still walking. You know, you go into a class of 400, you graduate maybe 170. So it was, you know, it's just like basic was terrifying for me. And it was really tough. It was really tough. One phone call a week. You know, when you're 18 and you do this, it's an experience. When you're 36, it's like, it's mind boggling.
That is impressive, dude, because when I did it right after college, that's all I knew. I knew college and then that, and that was my profession. So yeah, that was the one thing that I was really interested in, is how that obviously you found a mind game that worked for you to get through.
Hey, let me ask you one quick question. Now, when you did basic and then you go straight to helicopter, or did you have to like test into that?
So I did, I actually had an air contract before I even signed on. So the, I said, and I explained this a couple of episodes ago. When I went to talk to the recruiter, I didn't have I wasn't an engineer in college. I mean, I just did whatever. I just did enough to get through college. And like the Army, the Navy, and Air Force all said you had to be an engineer to be an aviator. And the Marine Corps recruiter that I talked to, he was actually more impressed that I was going to be the captain of the lacrosse team than my grades. He's like, "We'll teach you everything you need to know." Yeah. So I went in knowing that if I passed officers candidate school and was commissioned, then I was going to go to flight school.
Nice. Well, getting back to that is so I was in basic training, and the first sergeant comes out and he says, "Anybody? We have a couple guys out here with college degrees. If anybody wants to go to OCS, let me know, Officer Candidate School."
Yeah.
So it certainly, you know, okay, maybe that's something I should do. It was so funny because I had a friend from high school who became a captain in the Army. He somehow found out that I joined. I hadn't talked to the guy in 20 years. All of a sudden, we're all in line, you know, all in formation. And all of a sudden, Taule, up here, you got a phone call. I'm like, oh, what did I do? You know, I thought I was in trouble. And here it's my friend Mitch, who's got this really distinctive voice, like, "Hey, Tim, it's Mitch." You know, it's like, hey, I was like, Mitch, sir, Mitch. Like, I didn't even know what to call him, you know? Yeah. He's the captain. So I talked to him about it, and he says, "Listen, if you can, it's a much different lifestyle. It's like day and night, you know. It's like when you go into a company, you have your CEOs and you got the guys in the warehouse, you know? So for me, I think that if I would have stayed in, which just to me, by the time I was getting out, I really started to feel it physically, because I realized I could only do what I was doing with the 30 at that time, 38-year-old body wasn't going to last. You know what I'm saying? My rank was too low because I'm still the guy humping the 50 cal off the top of the truck. You know,
Yep.
I'm not a first sergeant. I wouldn't be a first sergeant until I was 47. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it was, so I thought about it, and I think if I would have stayed in, I would have probably approached that. And that would have been really strange, seeing a, you know, 38-year-old guy in OCS. That would have been really crazy. Well,
dude, it's funny. One of my best friends from the Marine Corps just lives a mile away from me, and he's got all white hair. So very similar stuff. He was a prior enlisted Marine before he became an officer. But yeah, so so when you decided to go in, you're like, hey, I'm just going to do the 3-year contract or the 3 years, whatever it is, and I'm just going for it. I really didn't, in terms of career progression, that just wasn't, you were just like, I'm going in, going to do my thing and see where it takes me.
Right. Yeah. And I really thought about, you know, re-upping. I really thought about making a career out of it, but I was like, if I can't do what I'm doing, like, I didn't want to change MOSs. Like, you know, I didn't want to go and, you know, become an admin or something like that. Or like, cause that's where most of the, I'll use the term, I don't know what it's kind of a bad word. Can I use a little bit of a bad word on
Absolutely.
your podcast? Or,
yeah.
A broke dick. You know, like that's what they call you in the Army. When you're an infantry guy, you're a broke dick. They send you over here to do the paperwork for the air jumps. And so for me, it just wasn't, you know, unless I could keep doing what I was doing, which I really liked. The job itself is awesome. The only problem with being infantry is that when there's nobody to, you know, there's no missions or something, they pimping you out to the cooks. They send you over to help the mechanics.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I didn't join the Army to clean dishes. You know what I'm saying? So like, so it was, you know, it was problematic at times because I think that, you know, the infantry it's almost like, I almost feel like, you know, you're the slave of the Army. You know, you do the tough work. And when you're not doing the tough work, you're going to do the dirty work with the rest of these guys. So, and look, most of the guys like didn't want to train and would rather do KP. So they would switch with me. I ended up doing KP one time, my whole tour in Afghanistan, which was about 8 months. And it was dreadful. You know, I got like an E4, like telling me to, hey, go over there and clean those dishes. I'm like,
oh man. All right. So here we go. So first deployment was Afghanistan, basically July, right? I mean, 9 months after 9/11. Was that, because I have one of my really good friends, and this was one of the early interviews that I did. He was a Cobra pilot, and he went over literally that first Camp Rhino, the first kind of group right after 9/11. He was over there. And then when you guys got there, they had already started ramping a big mission over there. Is that?
well, my first tour was a sleeper. Most of the stuff, you know, you guys, the first wave of people just kind of quieted things down there so much. So when we got there in July, you know, I always say it's like this. It's like months of just boredom and then 10 seconds of sheer terror. Yeah. You know, because they're constantly rocketing the base, you know, 105 rockets hitting the base all the time. They're never very accurate. So after a while, you probably get a little too complacent. You know, you go off, and the first time it goes off, you know, you jump out and go change your shorts because you're so scared. And then by 3 months in, you're just like, yeah, it's another one. Yeah. You know, so, but it was a very sleepy tour. The only bad thing that happened, and which you know, put the fear of God in me, was that we got on a base in it was in Afghanistan. It's not Kabul, Organy. No, it's not Organy. I think it was a small base in Organy. And the problem is the 82nd always gets grouped with the big boys. You know, we always get put on bases because they use us. Sometimes they'd rather use the 82nd than the Ranger Battalion, because the Ranger Battalion and the Special Ops kind of get in pissing contests sometimes. Yeah. And all we do is follow orders. Because God, for me, I'm not going to, you know, Delta guy tells me to do this, I'm doing that, you know. So one of the Delta guys on base got killed the second night we were there. And I'm like, if that guy, you know, with all the stuff they got and all the experience they got. So, you know, it was really the one, you know, the moment where, because we had to go out and everybody that had a big procession for him, you know, the boots and the M16. And so it was really, you know, reminded me of where I was, you know, what was going on. Yeah. But the problem is that, you know, a month would go by and nothing would happen. And you're kind of, you know, you doing drills, you know, find your weapon every so often just to make sure it's zeroed, and, you know, timing the headspace and timing on the 50 cals, make sure they're sharp. So, but there wasn't really too much for us to do. So we did a lot of tower guard, you know, so we would sit in towers for 4 to 6 hours at a time, which certainly, you know, you get to know your friends, you know, because you got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
But it was a good time, you know, my first tour. Certain places were a lot friendlier. Organy, especially when I went back the second time. When I was in Afghanistan, we went from Kandahar to Bagram to Organy, Jalalabad, Asadabad. So we were just all over. Wherever they needed us, we were trucks. We could drive everywhere we wanted. So that was kind of cool because we changed the scenery every time. The base in Asadabad was awesome. It was maybe 300 people, a lot of OGA, which other government guys,
Yep.
don't know what they do, but they all walk around in shirts like you. They always had the best internet.
Yeah.
That's why we loved it. They always had the best internet. But that was a great base because they were in charge of training the Afghani special forces. And we became such good friends with like 5 of these guys that when we'll talk about my third tour, when I went back to the third tour, when our helicopter landed, they were on the landing pad, just waiting for us. Presents, drinks, food. We had a big tea ceremony that night when we came in. Like these guys remembered us from like 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was really special when you kind of make that kind of contact with people there who appreciate you being there.
Yeah.
You know, which doesn't always happen.
Yeah, that was going to be one of the questions I wanted to ask, was if you had any contact with them. So did you guys do any operations together, or was you just more training them and then letting them go out and do their
Yeah,
thing?
and again, we weren't really the whatever those guys were who were with us. Again, I'm not sure, but they were doing the training.
Gotcha.
So like I said, we'd always get put on there. We do a few missions from there. Like if they thought something was up, we had 2 OPs. One was about 18 clicks away, which you didn't want to go to that one because, man, the mountains get cold. I don't care what kind of snivel gear they give you. Nothing works, dude. So then we had another OP that was about a mile off the base, but you had to literally, you know, with 60 pounds of stuff, get up these very jagged rocks and stuff like that. And then you'd stay up there for 3 nights and then someone would come and replace you. So that's essentially that's why I say it was kind of a slow, kind of like really kind of getting a preview. We had a lot of contact. Organy, we used to go into town and have lunch once a week.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, it was fantastic. We sit down and they love, it was one of the towns that really liked us, you know, like there was a doctor there who was the mayor. And he had told me one day, he said, you know, the Russians came in here and just killed everyone and blew everything up. And all you guys are doing is building. Because that's another thing we did. It's like when they're building a school, this is the sick part about being in some of the parts of the world where like life really means nothing over there, because they were building a school and they had to have us there guarding the guys building the school because the bad guys would have blew up the school.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Dude, it's funny that you mentioned that because I interviewed my wife's aunt, who is actually Vietnamese, and she was talking about growing up in French-controlled South Vietnam in the late 40s, 50s. And when the guerrillas were starting to really ramp up operations against the French, they were doing that exact. They were pulling civilians out of,
Is that the one you had her on, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I saw that one. I was trying to catch a little bit of each one.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It's just scary, and I think a lot of people, a lot of civilians over here really can't put their heads around that. But the same thing happened when we were in Iraq. We'd have some of the locals would come up and like a little tea house, kind of near our chow hall on base. Every morning they'd get bussed up, and then every night they'd bus them back down to the main gate, which I never saw. It was a couple miles away from where we were flying out of. But it got to the point where all of a sudden, one day they don't show up, and then the next day they don't show up, and then you find out under, just kind of by rumor that the Al-Qaeda was started waiting for them to come off base, and were either killing them or going after their families. So obviously any support from the locals just dried up as fast as it, it's just amazing and sad.
No, I have stories just like that. When we were in Iraq, these 2 brothers, Fadi and Khalid, great friends, anything we needed. Hey, I want a rug for this room, you know? Give me a rug for $6. Beautiful, nice rug. Want a candy bar, anything you would get him. So they left one night. They got Fadi. Khalid, I think, was like paralyzed because, you know, it's just so sad. And all these guys are trying to do is make a living. You know, all they're trying to do is support. What's really funny too is they had a little cousin who was like 9 years old, and I guess the UN gives away a lot of jackets and stuff. But he was wearing a New York Rangers jacket, and to see that over there was kind of like, whoa, that's neat.
Bizarro world.
Yeah.
Oh man, and so that was the other thing I wanted to ask you. Like when you were in Iraq, so you got there, or you left right when we got there. So you left in March.
I was going to say we probably just crossed paths.
Yeah, literally. Like I think we arrived the second or third week in March. So yeah, and then and then we were there for 6 months. But you were there you basically. Yeah. Okay. So the half. So you were kind of the last part of the invasion, and then things started kind of settle down and work into more of that police kind of patrolling type of a thing.
Yeah.
So where were you over there?
Iraq was like, for me, I'll take it from the beginning of when we got there, because, I was expecting another Afghanistan. Again, we're not the first wave and stuff like that, but, it was still pretty hot. And the reason why we knew that is that when we came in the C5, they cut all the lights. So that tells me when we flew into Kandahar, lights on, guys partying, gotten off the Ling, nothing's up. Lights out, and all we see in every direction is tracers all over. And all of us go like this. My friend goes, we're not in Afghanistan anymore. So this was like, we're like, oh, this is the show, right? We spent 2 places there. We're at the Rock, which was the small base. Again, I love the small bases. The only problem is the grub's not good. You usually live off of the T-Rats and the MREs and stuff. Some of those bases got great food. When MEK came in, they had guys serving stuff. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So we come in, and like I said, it was the dead of night. So we were. Are you familiar with Dreamland? It was the place with all the lakes and stuff.
No.
What it was is Saddam, Uday and Quasi, Saddam's sons, had it was a resort. So it was literally thousands of little huts that slept about 4 people, surrounded by like 12 lakes. Huh. And that's why we called it Dreamland, because it was absolutely beautiful. They had a place for concerts and stuff like that. So that was a pretty cool base. The grub was okay there, but when we went, we spent our time between there and this place they called the Rock. And all it was an ammo supply point. So essentially we're there to back up the EOD guys who were blowing up all the munitions, because that's all they did every day was just blow up his munitions. And it was, it was just fields of it. I have a picture that I had to take in reference to Dr. Zhivago. I'm on like an interballistic missile like this. So I had to take it. But so we got there, and it was much different. Like we had to go into Fallujah every day to pay the mayor. Yeah. They had to pay him. And it wasn't if we're going to make contact, it was just when. Yeah. The good thing about it is that, a couple nights you get your nose bloodied up, but, they're kind of their battle plan then was just hit and run.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So that, a couple RPGs and stuff like that, and, they can get out of there, they're going to get out of there, because, of course, they don't want, first of all, like during the winter, like after this skirmish one night, we go back there and there's a sandal. I'm like, these guys are fighting in sandals.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it was, but it was, there was some nights that, much different experience. Like literally, when you get terrified so much, you're almost over it by the 3rd month. That every night, every time you go out, and don't forget, we were there when I first got there. We had light-skinned Humvees, right? Not the big up armors. Yeah. The shields. We didn't have shields. So I always wanted to be a gunner. And then when you finally get up on that gun, you're just like, I'm the target right now. Yeah. I got the big gun. I'm the first, I'm the target, and you hear about gunners, especially when you drive through, they called it the Triangle of Death, which is right near Fallujah, which they'd occasionally drop a 500-pound daisy cutter on. Like they warn us ahead of time. Yeah. And we're like 5 miles away from it, and the ground would shake, just to clear that area, because that was a hot area there.
Yep.
So it was, it's just a much different experience. And it was, it really kind of like, I at one point I said, wow, this is kind of more what I expected, to be kind of changing your shorts every other day.
So I think, dude, I think that we were pretty close because Al Taqaddum was the air base that we flew out of, and that was basically along. I don't remember the road. I think it was Michigan was the highway that went between Fallujah and Ramadi. Their base was the base was right there. So we would literally, it was up on a kind of a plateau, and whenever we were getting called into Fallujah, we'd basically beeline it. Like, for instance, there was one day we were fighting in Fallujah, and you could stand on top of our hangar and watch the fighting going on. So we were probably pretty close to where you were then.
Yeah, there was a bunch of stuff around there, and there was a bunch of little bases, and I'm sure the bases also changed and stuff as time went on.
Because the Marine Corps
when we left Fallujah, Dreamland, the Marines took over for us.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
And that was kind of an interesting thing because I realize how underfunded you guys are. Like it's really scary because, you guys come in with, first of all, M16s, right? Your infantry. And we're like, who the hell is this? The British? Like the British are coming, the British, because we have M4s all tacked out with the laser. They had one guy per not platoon, but per section. Let's say you have 4 sections in a platoon who had night vision.
Yeah.
So I was like, God, they got to get these guys some money, man. Like you showed up like the Army 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Now the 82nd may be different because don't forget Fort Bragg has Delta and I think it's 6, the Special Forces. I think it's 6, yeah. So that, and they have the 18th Airborne Corps. So there's so much there that filters down to us as far as weaponry, so, but I was pretty surprised. I was like, wow, they really got to throw you guys some bread, man.
That's the Marines are known for that. They're the kind of the redheaded stepchild of the Navy. So, and that's crazy. So, and most of your job over there at the time, because we took over from an Army unit that was at Al Taqaddum as well. So you guys were basically just rolling all the bases over. So when you were there in Fallujah, you were going downtown pretty much every day, huh?
Every day we had one trip a day. We would switch off which section would go. I was in a Delta group, AT4, which means we're officially anti-tank units, but we're the anti-tank units kind of turned into. It's funny how war kind of changes combat, because the first thing you're taught is like to dismount out of the truck.
Yeah.
The first time we did that and some guy got killed by an IED, we never left the truck again.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you kind of learn and stuff like that as we're going. So, we became a big part of the fight only because every single section had 2 50 cals, 2 Mark 19s, and an ITAS tow missile system. So as far as my section alone had so much firepower that, we could take down a building, with these kind of weapons. Yeah. So that's why everybody wanted us around, because if the line dogs go in and stuff happens, they pull out and we just shout.
Yeah.
And we actually got Iraq was awesome in the sense that I had an awesome lieutenant. This guy joined us. I remember the first time. He's a maverick too. You know what that means in the when you go from
prior enlisted officer.
Yep. So this guy he was in the Army and he somehow got into West Point and he became an officer. And it was just, the officers are tough because they're young. You know what I'm saying? You come in with your butter bar and you're trying to flex a little bit. And a lot of them, I think, overstep their bounds, especially when you're talking to an E7 who's 40 years old, who's been through, he's an old. So it was interesting that we found this guy who was just he got in so much trouble because of all the stuff he would do for us. You know what I'm saying? This is when we got back from Iraq, right? The first thing we do is got to go and clean the trucks. So we got to go to the truck wash, right? He comes with us. He's spraying trucks down with us. And the captain comes up and says, you don't do that stuff. So and he was like, all right. And he would just leave, and then he would come back later,
Yeah.
So he was a really cool guy to the point where I'll never forget this day. I had a really nasty night. A buddy of mine took one in the back of the shoulder and we had to get him from Fallujah to Bagram, right? Because that's where they bring everybody, Bagram. You get to Bagram, I don't care what's wrong with you, you got a 90% chance you're going to live. And some of the stuff I hear, on the medical side is just, you know, how wars really kind of advance medical and stuff like that because of what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So you know, it's really funny. They shoot him up with a little morphine. He's kind of goofy and stuff. And he didn't have his body armor because they took it off him and no one could find it. So Lieutenant Smythe takes his body armor, his helmet, and gives it to him and rides all the way to Bagram with nothing.
Wow.
I was just, and again, it's funny because I just talked to him about 2 weeks ago, and I'm so delighted every time I talk to him. First of all, I'm delighted that he seeks me out.
Yeah.
Like he'll always hit me up on LinkedIn or something. Hey,
Nice.
brother, give me a call. Now he's gone way beyond. He went to Special Forces. Now he's with the CAG, or what's the other call? SFODD.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. They have so many names for it, right? So he was a great guy. And so Iraq was a great experience. It was, like I said, it was much different than my first tour in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
In Afghanistan, I might have fired my weapon once. Iraq, it was, you know, every other day.
Yeah.
You know, and most of the time it was just to scare people, because you light up that 50 cal and everything scurries like a cockroach.
Yeah. Hey, dude, as far as I'm concerned, it's that level of just that intensity level all the time. That's tough to. That's the one thing that really sticks out, is that even when you're not doing anything, like when it's not your day to fly or whatever, you're still not completely relaxed, you know?
Yeah, no, and also like they would have us like, you know, it gets downtime so much and they're like, all right, we're going to start doing PT every day. We're like, what? So we're outside doing friggin' sit-ups in the back of the hooch, right?
Yeah.
And a couple rockets land by. We're like, no, we're going to be inside the hooch, man.
Yeah.
You know? So, you know, they you know, it's military intelligence, those two words sometimes, you know, don't always add up, but.
I love it. I love it. So now you leave Iraq, and then you go to Ranger School.
No, I went, and that's, we kind of, in between my first in Iraq.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Got
and
it.
that was,
Okay.
I tell you, that was kind of a mind, it really messed with my mind, because I went there, I recycled my first phase. I got cellulitis in my hand. So literally I woke up and my hand was like a baseball mitt.
Yeah.
So a lot of antibiotics. So I didn't make it through the first phase. So what happens when you do that is you have to do the whole first phase over, minus the 25-yard road march, which is really the killer. That's what takes everybody out. That's when I told you when bodies are just dropping, because you've done like, you know, a full week of just intense, you know, pull-ups, push-ups, all this stuff, running 3-mile run with full battle gear and stuff. And then you have to walk from this point to the next, and that's dead of night. And you're just so tired. And guys, I'm telling you, just like falling out of line like every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So that was in between the two tours. And the thing that messed with my mind is that my platoon, my whole battalion left without me. So now I'm like, here I am playing Army, you know, because it's a school, no matter what you say about it. And Ranger School is a leadership school. Anybody can get through U.S. Army Ranger School as long as you want to.
Yeah.
It's a difficult school. It's physical, but I'm telling you, anybody who wants to get through the school will get through it. And it's a leadership. It's a leadership course. That's all Rangership. Can you take 20 guys who haven't slept in 3 days, who've had about 300 calories of food a day from this point to this point? And that's what it taught you. And like I said, it was tough for me again, you know, because I didn't know. And it's still like, we're coming on this show with you. Like, I don't even feel like I hear military guys and the terminology comes so quick to them. But for me, it was only there for 3 years, you know? So it wasn't like, I never feel like anytime I'm around these guys who just like, everything is an
acronym,
3 letters or 2 letters or something like that. So that was messed my mind. So I was really kind of, I almost thought about dropping out of Ranger School just to get to Iraq. But if you do that at the 82nd, they're not going to be very happy. You know, your unit has to pay for you to go to Ranger School. Yeah. But they don't like when you come back without a Ranger tab.
Yeah.
So I gutted it out, got out in September. I think they got into country in August. It took the Air Force because it was real busy then. So the logistics of the Air Force was tough. So I probably got there around the end of October.
Okay.
And actually, the very end, because the only guy in my battalion we lost died probably 4 days before I got there, you know, and you talk about only the good dying young. Staff Sergeant Johnson, Paul Johnson, wow. I mean, just an incredible human being. And I met him when I did the brigade competition. He was the NCO and I was the enlisted guy.
Okay.
So, you know, when you find these guys that are like, just everything, you know, he was super nice, super, you know, he's a religious man, had a family, had kids, the best guy in the world, you know. So when they say only the good die young, man, it was just, so that's what I was walking into. Like, you know, this guy that, like, you know, Staff Sergeant Johnson died. I'm like, no way, you know. And it was just, so getting there, like, I knew it was just a whole different ball game. And it was, it's just a lot different there. It's a lot different. The two cultures are very different. You don't realize that, you know, the Afghans are not, they're not Arabs. You know, it's a very different culture. They don't look alike. They don't sound alike. You know, they speak Pashtun, which is pretty close to Arabic. You know, they're both very similar, but the cultures are very, very different.
Yeah.
You know, like you can't, you go to Afghanistan, you'll find, you know, drugs and alcohol. You go to Iraq, there's nothing.
Yeah.
You know? And I had a couple guys in the platoon who would seek out such stuff. Especially when you're in Afghanistan with the other like countries and stuff.
Yeah.
Like the Polish, and they always have booze with them, you know. Then they started making their own, and guys were getting sick off of it. I'm like, really? Like, my friends would actually send me like scotch in a Listerine bottle, and I would just give it. I didn't want to get, like, to me, like, getting drunk was like the last thing I wanted to do, you know.
Yeah, that's funny because we.
But I wasn't 18 either.
Yeah, exactly. And so when we were over there, we'd have the same thing. People would send us booze all the time. And we actually had so I was in a reserve squadron when I was over there, my reserve helicopter squadron. And when 9/11 hit, this reserve squadron just ballooned up. And so there were guys that were like airline pilots that, you know, were taking a leave to come over. And we had a guy who was a 747 pilot. He had to be in his mid 50s, maybe at the time, old guy. I mean, he just looked like an old dude, and he, you know, he's a Gulf War I vet. So all of his buddies that he was over there with, they're all older now, and they would send him, literally under his cot was packed with booze in plastic bottles. And he had one of the greatest lines ever. And he said, sometimes quantity is quality when it comes to booze. Because it was supposed to be a dry base over there. So that's pretty hilarious.
That was in Iraq, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because, you know, there was a lot of that tomfoolery in Afghanistan, but when we got into Iraq, there wasn't really, I guess we just, at the point, you know, being in Fallujah, you don't have too much contact with the outside over there.
Yeah.
So it was a bit different.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are right in the thick of it. I mean, you were right there. You're right next door to that place.
Funny. You know, you want to know another thing, talking about missing friends like this? I had a friend who's a very famous comic named Graham Elwood, and he was doing the, what's that? The Bob Hope.
The USO. Tours.
USO. So he was coming over with them, and he's like calling me, and I get him on the phone. He's like, where are you going to be? I was like, in Bagram. I said, we're getting out of here like next week. He said, I'm coming in Wednesday. So we were chalked to leave on Thursday. They pulled us on Tuesday.
Oh,
so like,
no way.
It would have been so surreal to see a civilian that I know, like, over there, you know, like, and he was a really funny guy too. So it would have been really cool, but I never saw him. And he was a good guy. You know, he's one of those comics who's very, you know, for a guy who's very liberal ideology, he couldn't do enough for the troops. Always anything he could do. He did this whole video DVD called Afghanistan. And he, all the proceeds went to the veteran causes and stuff. So, you know, you don't always have to be the same ideology, but, you know, we should all love the military. You know, I mean, that's the way I feel.
Yeah, no, and I do too. It's just, and you know, we could probably start down this road, but I hope that's the case. I hope that's the case.
Maybe that's for another show.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, things are relatively calm now in the world in terms of Afghanistan and our exposure over there in Iraq, but who knows what's coming down the pipe.
Yeah, so you're right.
And do you, besides that captain or besides that officer, do you keep in touch with a lot of your buddies? Or? Yeah.
Well, it's like, you know, there, you know, especially the guys in, you know, my platoon was broken up into seven squads. I was in the fourth platoon, fourth squad of the, and now I'm messing this up. we had 4, I don't even remember. It's funny. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about the military, but the friends, those guys, like we are so, you know, till this day, it's like, as soon as one of them, I'm coming into town, when you get in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, when I was in LA, I'd have them blow through all the time. Now that we're a little older and we have kids and stuff like that, we don't see, but we're constantly in contact. There are certainly guys we keep an eye on, because some of the guys, you know, came out a little, you know, I don't want to say damaged, but some of them had a tougher time coming out than others.
Yep.
But for the most part, like all of the guys I know are doing well. You know, they're working, they're functioning, they're doing, you know, they're doing good. So, and I love them. And it's just funny because it's not even like the relationship you have with your fellow soldiers is like a relationship no one's ever had.
Yeah. Because
a lot of these guys I'm not like crazy about, but I love them and I would do anything for them. You know what I'm saying? Like if we were friends, we probably wouldn't hang out that much, but the minute he calls me, I'm going to be there.
Right.
You know, and it's because, you know, even though I won the Brigade Soldier of the Year, I was a mediocre at best soldier. I was good on paper. The reason why I excelled is because I was older and mature and I didn't get in trouble. You know, I wasn't filled with Article 15s for losing my license at a strip club, you know, something like that. So, but the guys I met, like, it really instilled in me why we're the best armed forces in the world, why we're so good. And I can't even really put a finger on it. It's just something about the American soldier. Like these guys I were with, that were so efficient at what they did.
Yeah.
Like when I got on a gun, I was like, I'm never going to be as good as that guy. You know, you're talking about guys who are, you know, throwing stuff 600 meters down range and putting it into a basketball hoop. You know, I mean, just ridiculous at everything they do and fearless, you know? I mean, the first time we caught some unfriendly fire, and I was in the turret, and again, no shields or nothing, just me and actually that time I was on a Mark 19, and I ducked. You know, I kind of like ducked in the thing. You know, for me, that was a pretty normal thing to do. Boy, did I catch it when we got back to the base, man.
Yeah. You know, and
they call me the duck dive every day. Hey, Duck, what's going on, Duck? It's like just ridiculing me. And as I ducked down, I realized that it was so hot in the summer that we had taken off the doors. So why I was ducking, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's you know, that's actually hilarious, because the first time that I took rounds in the helicopter,
that's
kind of
terrifying. By the way,
it was kind of almost the same. It was kind of almost the same thing. It was like I was basically the co-pilot for my buddy. He was flying, and I'm just kind of looking around, just trying to figure out. You know, I was so far behind the situation that once I realized it, I was like, okay, here we get. You know, I have no idea what's going on, and he's like, dude, I need you to help me out here. So I'm like, okay, I'm back. But it's almost like you that first time, it's almost like, what's going on here? It's crazy.
Yeah. You think, you know, it's like, it's something you can never be ready for.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You can prepare yourself as much as you want, but you hear that 7.62 crack, you know, that sound when it comes by, it's a very distinct sound, and it's very unsettling. And, you know, it's, you know, for me, you know, and again, the best part, I guess, about it is that the enemy, you know, they're not very efficient at what they do. You know, they're just kind of like, you know, they're more about quality, quantity, throwing as many rounds at you as they can. But you know, that night I was terrified, and they're like, and then there's like the conversation when you get back, should I have fired back? You know, so we sit down, we have our after action review, AAR. And, you know, my, you know, a couple of guys said, listen, you got to fire back at that point. I'm like, with what? The Mark 19? I said, at the house? You know, so like you go through those conversations. My squad leader was way behind, you know, was right behind me. He said, no, you don't fire into that house. You want to get a good shot off with your M4, by all means. But, you know, you're not going to put some 40 millimeter hand grenade rounds into a home.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's just, it's something that you go through, and, you know it, I could tell by looking at you, because, you know, every time you talk about it, you kind of like contract a little. You know, like you pucker a little bit every time you think about that moment. Now, first of all, being in a helicopter, first of all, I love helicopters. I love flying in helicopters in a war zone. Wow. It's the scariest thing. And how big are the Hueys? Are they as big as the Chinooks?
Oh no,
No.
they're
Like
they're basically what would the Army have that would be
the Apache?
it's about that same size,
Right.
but it's not nearly as armored as that thing is.
How
And
many people does it carry? Like, how many troops could you get in
well,
there?
dude, the one that I flew was so old and so underpowered that it was basically two pilots, two crew chiefs with the crew serve weapons in the back, and we could probably fit maybe 3 or 4 guys in there. Maybe.
What kind of weapons do the gunners have?
50 cal and a 240.
Nice. Okay. No Gatling guns?
No, I'm sorry, 50 cal and a Gatling gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I wanted one of those.
Yeah,
But really, like I tell you, like the one time, because we did a lot of helicopter, we mostly drove, but every time we took a helicopter, and I got to tell you the worst story ever was the 101st. We get 301st helicopter pilots taking us from, I think it was somewhere in Iraq, probably Bagram to Fallujah or something like that, or wherever we were going. And this guy wanted to punish us.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Guys were throwing up and stuff. My squad leader comes back there and says, if one of you guys throw up, you know, I'm going to get, when we land, you're going to be sorry you threw up. I literally swallowed the throw up in my mouth like 3 times. The guy next to me, the pilots around, they're like, if you're going to throw up in your helmet. My squad leader is like, no, if they want to do this to you, throw up in their helicopter, right? One guy throws up in his helmet, right?
Oh, God.
And he says, and his lieutenant says, put your helmet back on.
Oh, God. That's like out of a movie. That's
I tell you, like some of these things, like, you know, me and you could sit here and joke about it. Like every time I tell a story around anybody else, they're like, that's not funny. You know, it's like with my friend Josh Devereaux. He was this big, lumbering, smartest guy I've ever met in my life. He did everything, whatever you needed fixed, weapons, radios. He knew, he could tell you Huey, what it shoots, how fast it goes. Like just a brilliant guy. And what I found in most of these young guys is that they think because they didn't go to college, they're not smart.
Yeah. And
I always had to tell them there's a difference between education and being smart. I'm educated. I'm not overly smart. I'll admit it. Like these guys, you know, this one kid, Sam, he was like so smart, grew up on a farm, married his wife when she was like 15. They lived next to each other, a mile apart, you know, 2 houses. So he grew up in the middle of nowhere. But we would play Scrabble. He would play Scrabble with all the officers and decimate them.
Really?
So smart. So Josh caught a 7.62, and what happened is it didn't hit him. It hit his plate in the back. It hit the plate and ricocheted around. So I know it's not funny to most people, but when he jumped off the truck, he was kind of like Herman Munster, like, oh, you know, so like, of course, when we get back, the first thing we do is just start making fun of him, you know, and I'll tell my wife this story. She's like, you know, you're laughing about your friend getting shot. I'm like, you know, if you can't make levity of these things that happen, you know,
you go crazy.
So it was just really funny. And like I said, the guys I was with, man, God, I talked to this one guy, Peter Gonzalez. He was I don't know if he got his stripes, but he was a corporal, which is very odd for the infantry. But he's like now, you know, he's got his own garage. He's a mechanic, and he's got a beautiful wife now. And like, so it really makes me happy when I talk to these guys and they're doing really well. Because not all of them are, you know?
Yep.
Some of them. And I went to the VA a little bit when I first got out. And I went to the PTSD. I watched some of the films you had. Great. I didn't catch all of it, but all the stuff he was saying about PTSD. And so I went to the VA. We had a wonderful social worker there. And I kind of went just to see where my head was.
Yeah.
And when I got there, I realized that there were some guys who were just so damaged they might not be able to like really survive anymore. You know what I'm saying? It was just, so you learn that there's post-traumatic stress syndrome and then there's post-traumatic stress. Yeah. Meaning that I know I have post-traumatic stress. You drop a broom handle on a tile floor and I jump out of my shoes. Yeah. But does it affect my life? That's where the disorder comes from. If you can make it through life, you know, I'm never going to stop checking my 6. You know what I'm saying? I jog, I'll ride a bike. I always check my 6, you know, that kind of thing is just, that's never going to end. You know what I'm saying? And the first couple of 4th of Julys I was home, I spent like in a fetal position in bed. you know, because it's almost a little weird, especially when you go over there and you're only fighting at night, and everything has a color now.
Yeah.
You know, all the tracers have colors, and it's like,
Yep.
you know, it's almost like Star Wars. It's
Yeah.
crazy, you know. Every single memory I have of Iraq is in green. Because we always had the nods on.
Exactly.
Slept all day and we went out at night, you know? So like
Yeah.
I realized in my brain, I'm like, why am I thinking about this in green? Like, is
Yeah.
something wrong with me?
Dude, I was the same way because most of my flying, especially my first deployment, most of my flying was at night. So.
And you guys wore nods?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And how are they? Pretty good? Like, could you?
Again, we probably had a generation below what you guys had, but they were fine.
You could see. And
yeah, and you get, that's all you trained on, so you got real proficient with using them. But
you ever run into bad weather?
Oh yeah, dude, we had one. We were in. This was the first deployment, and the Alticatum was on. Like I said, it's kind of on a plateau overlooking one of those big lakes that you were referring to. And we took off middle of the night. There was no stars out because it was getting overcast, and we started heading west over the ocean or over the lake. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, basically this big wall of it just was jet black in front. And we turned around, landed. And as soon as we landed, you know, that Shamal, those sandstorms that blow through, they're like, 2 kilometers high and 30 miles long, and they just roll across the desert. That thing, we didn't land and shut down and stop the helicopter for 2 minutes, and it just engulfed everything. It was crazy. So that was pretty wild. And then the next morning you wake up and there's a light dusting of sand over everything. It was like a snowstorm. But yeah, and then obviously at night, anytime there's overcast, things get a lot darker and a lot grainier. But that weather was pretty gnarly.
Yeah, see, that's this. Like I said, I love helicopters, and if I did my life over, I would definitely learn to fly a helicopter. Did you ever do it now? Do you ever fly a helicopter?
No, it's funny because when I first got out in 2006, I called Harry up in LA, and Harry sent me down basically the contact list of all the helicopters that provide all the aviation for the movies. He's like, you should go interview with some of these guys. And I never took him up on it. In retrospect, maybe that would have been cool, but at the time I was so ready to get my feet on the ground.
I just love them. Like I got to jump out of a Chinook. I got to jump out of an Apache.
Nice.
And it was so much nicer because when you're jumping helicopters, you're jumping with the Army. When you're jumping out of planes, you're jumping with the Air Force.
Yeah.
So like literally you go down to green ramp, you load up, I'm usually jumping anywhere from 60 to 90 pounds, depending on what I'm carrying. And you'd have to sit there and wait at green ramp for the Air Force. So like you're all done up. It's very uncomfortable. You're just miserable. Then people said, like, how do you jump out of a plane? You can't wait to get out of there. You don't even care if there's knives waiting on the ground for you. Like it's so uncomfortable. And then you'll do like a mass tack jump with like 3,000 people in the air and guys running on top of your chutes, and it's like pandemonium. Yeah. When you jump out of the helicopters, you put your stuff on, they do their little checks, you go up about 800, 1,000 feet, you jump out, day's done.
Boom.
And the Chinooks are great. You just walk off the back.
Dude, how many jumps did you have?
Not that many, because I honestly, I was probably in garrison, like on base, maybe 2.5 months out of 3 years. Okay. Because I was either in school or I was in overseas. Yeah. So I think I counted it. It was probably like 16. Okay. And 16 plus the 2 helicopter jumps, but they had one jump in Iraq. They were like, they're going to give you mustard stains. I'm like, for what? It's like all these guys went on a jump in Iraq just to, because I think it's more about the officers getting their mustard stain. Yeah. And if they got one, it wasn't a good one because there was like people on the ground giving them water. It wasn't like a jump, like the most humbling thing I ever had was when I sat down next to a World War II vet. And I said, I'm bragging. I'm like, how many jumps you got? I got 16. He goes, I got 2. Operation, what were the 2 in, God, man, my memory. But he jumped twice into World War II. Yeah. He jumped once into, man.
Normandy, Overlord.
Memory's gone.
Yeah.
I'll remember it as we talk.
Yeah.
So
Well,
here's a guy who had real combat jumps. He doesn't even count his practice jumps.
Yeah.
Like that's what we count as jumps, you know?
Yeah. And of course you're not doing
But
it.
I was terrified. That's the other thing is airborne school is the best because it's a gentleman's course, meaning at 3 o'clock when you're done, you can go do wherever you want.
Yeah.
So for me, like getting out of basic training, it was freeing. But the first time I jumped out of I'm terrified of heights, terrified. And the first time that door opened, and I always wanted to be the first guy out because crazy stuff happens back there, you know, guys tripping over each other. So I was like, I get to the door and I'm just like,
Gotta do
you know,
it.
I'm just knees shaking. I'm trying not to show, you know, but you know, you just kind of leap out because you're just really uncomfortable. And plus there's a guy in the back pushing everybody out.
Damn, dude.
Yeah.
Did you ever get over that fear of heights, or is that still with you? Just
No, it's still there. You know what's weird is that they do it. You jump off. One of the things you practice with is I think it's like 37 feet or 38 feet. They did a psychological test on what height are humans more afraid of.
Oh, okay.
And so this tower is 38 feet. And what they said is that this is, once you get to 1,000 feet, you're almost looking at like a map.
Recognize anything. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's not as real when you're looking at 40 feet.
Yeah.
You know, so like once you get there, you kind of, you know, the scary thing is just, you know, how your exit is so important when you come out of the plane. Because if you don't come in really tight and crunched up, you kind of go all over the place. And then like your line, you can catch a line with your arm, or like one guy I saw caught a leg and it like he landed on his back. So put it this way, we did a mass tack jumping night, 3,000 people. They give you a couple glow sticks. They give you a red glow stick if you're hurt. So a couple chalks went, right? The door opens and all I see are red glow sticks.
Oh, Jesus.
You know, broken legs, broken ankles, you know,
Really?
busted up stuff. And yeah, and I had, you know, I was never, you know, the landing is the big part of it, the PLF, you know, and I was never fantastic at it. And one time I hit some wind. They probably shouldn't have sent us out. We're probably around 21 knots. I don't think they send you out after 17, but you start to oscillate.
Yeah.
So you're trying to land, but you're oscillating. And I landed when the wind went right on my head. And I saw that white splash, you know, pow. And I was just like, and I just wiggled my toes and I was like, okay, my toes work, you know?
Jesus.
But you get over it like anything else.
I love it. I love it. All right. So let's talk about that little statue behind there. So soldier of the battalion soldier of the year, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's funny because, and I didn't actually get this till I got back from Iraq. I didn't even know I got a trophy. What happens is that they look for a guy who's going to make them look good. Okay. So I was always that guy. Again, I'm a mediocre soldier as far as firing my weapons. PT, I was a stud, I must admit. Like I always scored over 300 on the test. I was in phenomenal shape. I could run, I could do push-ups. But as the soldiering stuff, mediocre at best. There were so many guys who were so much better than me. But they didn't want to sit down and study because half of it's a board. So what you do in this competition is you do the physical. So you do your 2-mile run, your push-ups, your sit-ups. Then you have to do mop gear, which is pretty silly because I don't think we ever used. It was funny when they told us to get our gas masks one time, or like in Iraq, they told us to get our gas masks because there was a warning that was, it was like, we left that back in, you know, that's back in Bagram. We didn't even take it with us, you know, it's in the D bag.
Yeah.
So you had to do so much stuff like, you know, that these kids, you know, again, 20-year-old cool, they didn't want to go to school.
Right.
You know, so they actually, you know, I had to go in front of a board. So in front of all this sergeant major and all the first sergeants, and they do a good job of kind of ruffle you up, you know, like mess you up.
Yeah.
So I just, for me, it was like, again, I didn't want to be in garrison. I hated not doing, you know, infantry stuff. So whenever they asked me to do something, I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah. So all I did is I basically got together with an NCO and we trained every day for it. We went over you have to know all the, you know, the 82nd has the 670, which is the uniform and appearance and stuff. So for me, it was good. And that way I got to learn a lot, you know, for it. But it was great. And when they gave me the trophy, like it was after we came back from Iraq, and it was kind of a cool moment for me, you know, just I love trophies. We all grew up playing, you know, you probably got trophies from lacrosse and your national championships. And so for me, it was like to come out with this baby.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. And you said it perfectly. and it has a lot to do with the fact that you were so much more mature than everybody else. And, you know, and also you still had that kind of finite, I'm only here for a few years, just pack it all
Right.
into that couple of years. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
that's like I said, it was really strange when, like, you know, the first time an E7 walked in my room and I didn't even move. I just stayed on my bed. Boy, I'll never do that again. But, you know, it's such, when you come in as an 18-year-old, you're very aware of that stuff. For me,
And
it's
very
just a guy
impressionable.
my age walking in the room.
Yeah. Yep. Very impressionable the younger you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny. All right. Hey, brother. So this, I definitely want to ask you about this one is when I was doing some show prep to kind of figure out what we're going to talk about on your Facebook page, you have that, what was that, a couple of years ago at Yankee Stadium? Dude, how was that?
Dude. Well, my wife found out about that. Like, she saw a guy on the field, you know, and she was like, hey, maybe, you know, so she sends my stuff into this guy. And it's a really strange story too, because there's a lot of politics that go into it. Because the first day they told me I was going to have it, they pulled me out. Like, and I was all set to go. I had my friends coming with me. My friends were going to the game. The guy calls me and said, sorry, they're taking you, they're doing someone else. And I said, hey, come on, be honest with me. Like, kind of, what's this about? He says, it's either someone who works for the Yankees' uncle, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of nepotism. I said, look, you give me a freebie, you know, get me in while you can.
Yeah.
Following week, he gets me in. I never thought that would have like so much, like, to walk on the field with 40,000 people was kind of like the perfect ending. You know what I'm saying? To just like, because you're always, you know, I never look for people to pat me on the back, but it's so nice when it happens. And like, I got to tell you, my friends who I grew up with, I can't buy a drink anywhere. Like, I can't buy anything around these guys. You know, they think the world of me for what I did. And, you know, it feels good. So I thought walking out on the field, I would be like, no, this could be great. I'm going to feel like I was just, I don't know if you, like, I was like starstruck. Like, I forgot my family was with me, which really pissed me off afterwards. Like, it was kind of like, I was like, is this all about me? Like, I should have been hugging my kids and kissing my wife, but I was just so like, you know,
So
just trying to just, I was just like.
What year was that?
I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And
really cool.
so it was a great experience. They do a nice job. They give you great seats. They give you a bunch of, you know, hats and stuff like that. So I try to think, because ball games are so expensive, and God bless my kids, because they really get what the world is about. You know, like my 14-year-old goes in the store, he's like, that is a ripoff, you know, and he'll throw it away. So they know that it's expensive to go to a game. You know, you're going to spend $300-400 at a game, you know. So I take them once a year. So every year we'll go to one Yankee game. Well, this year I got a freebie, so it was really nice.
Nice, man. That
was really great.
That was a great picture. And so what do? They announce you as staff sergeant?
Yeah. Sergeant Tim Taule for the 82nd Airborne. You know, they kind of like, you give them this and they kind of just, you know, kind of quickly get it out there. But what's really funny is I had friends at the game that I didn't know, and they're like blowing me up on the phone. Like, dude, I'm over here in the section, you know, like everybody's coming over. So like, you know, like I said, it's like, it was almost like the perfect cap onto, even though it came so many years later, to like what I consider just an awesome 3 years, an awesome career. And in retrospect, I really wish, for me, it would have been fantastic if I did that out of high school, especially for me, who had no discipline.
Okay.
You know,
do you think you would have gotten as much out of it as you
probably
did?
Probably not, but maybe I would have made a career of it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I liked it so much. The month before I ETS, when I was kind of had to make the decision whether I was going to re-up, change ammo, you know, I was looking at a bunch of stuff. I threw out my back, and I've never thrown out my back, but they say once you throw it out once, it's kind of never going to be the same, you know?
Then you're
so like I spent the last month as a broke dick, you know, just kind of like sitting around. So, but I think as a young kid, I think that I probably would have hated a lot that I liked as an adult.
Yeah.
But conversely, I would have loved a lot, because, you know, once you get to base and you're with your buddies and you can go out and grab some beer, you know what I mean? It was just, it would have been so much fun. I would have been doing the same thing I did in college, except doing good stuff instead of just, you know, doing half-ass stuff in class, you know?
Yeah.
Because, you're much like me, we're all players. I essentially went to college to play lacrosse. Like, if there wasn't lacrosse, I'm not sure I would have went to college,
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you what, brother, this is awesome, man. This has been a great conversation. It's been great
Absolutely,
catching up.
man.
Yeah.
I got to say to all your fans, I have a few friends, and look, we had a very brief, encounter, me and you. We had about that 3-year period or whatever, but I look at you as one of those guys, just a straight up military guy, and I knew you. You were one of the few guys I knew in the military when I joined. Now, and I don't know, like, when did you realize that I went in? Was it soon after I went in? Did Harry tell you or no?
Yeah, yes, and Harry did. It had been right afterwards. Yeah, it had to have been. So.
I think you're a fantastic guy. I really wish you well with this, and it's tailor made for you. This kind of thing,
It's
you're
fun.
Handsome as hell. You're a good talker, and
dude, I always say this to people. I'm like, it's you. You should just grab a couple of your friends sometime and just talk to them, because there's a lot of really interesting people out there. And your story is one that I love. It just motivates me. And it's an example for, I think, for the rest of America. You stepped up when you didn't have to. And that's awesome.
Yeah. Hey, look, if anything else, don't forget, they raised the age now. I think it's 39.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think they did. And look, if you're a dude out there who's 35 and, you might get fired from your job from COVID and stuff like that, I'm telling you right now, man, all you have to do is 2 years. Yeah, you might want to do more, but all you have to do is 2.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it'll change your life. You're a 35-year-old guy out there, and, you just got fired, or you're not really happy with your job and stuff. And you don't have to be infantry like the knuckle dragger I am. There's a lot of things you could do. You could fly helicopters. You can, become an admin person. You can fix air conditioning. It's 212 jobs in the Army. Yeah. So it's a great thing. And if someone saw this thing and said, "Hey, I'm gonna go do that," I
didn't realize that they did that, but it makes sense. I mean, I'm sure you probably weren't the only one. They were probably
no. Oh, here's a quick story. There was another guy in my basic class who was my age, and at first I hated him because I thought he was stealing my thunder. And I'm like, no, I'm the old guy. But we became great friends. He lives in Montana now. Yeah. And like, once I got over him being the other old guy, like, we became like really tight.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, brother. Well, listen, man, great talking to you. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'll finish it off by saying this. If you're in the military, the police departments, fire departments, or first responders, if that's you out there, thank you very much. Stay safe. We really appreciate everything you do. Timmy, great talking to you, brother.
God bless, Brian. God bless you. Thank you.
All right, man. Hey, it's the Rain Man. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Rainman's Take, observations on the world we live in. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow Rainman's Take on Instagram at Rainman's Take. Also, check out our website at www.rainmanstakepodcast.com and send your comments to rainmanstake@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for future podcasts, which will be coming out every Thursday at 5 p.m. West Coast time.